How did we get here? Welcome back to Courageous Motherhood. Today, I want to really just delve into some of the revelation, revealing, family of origin stuff that's connected to some of the relationship choices and decisions and just life in general, right? And so, this past holiday season, I shared a little bit in another video about some of the people that I was watching and that were kind of giving me insight into relationships and understanding what to look out for, different tactics and stuff. But one of the other pieces in all this that is super imperative is like understanding why you make the choices that you make, understanding how you got to where you are, right? This has nothing to do with anybody else's behavior. This has to do with like your template, your homing device, your choices, right? So we can run into whatever kind of people we run into in life, and that's just a fact. But ultimately, it's us, whoever us is, male, female, whatever, we ultimately choose. And what we're choosing is impacted by like our family of origin history, our sense of self-respect, our sense of self-worth, perhaps our religious perspective. Wherever we are in life, there's all these different factors that impact how, what, why, who, what, where, when, and why we choose the things that we do. And so I just wanted to share a little bit of the deeper level of understanding that started to unwind and reveal itself in this last year or so. So there's this visual, and I want you to go with me. I want you to think about a spiral staircase. And so a lot of times when people talk about healing and they talk about their healing journey, it's almost as if they talk about it like they're going to actually arrive somewhere, and that's actually not. So we talk about healing and our healing journey as if it's a place that we are going to arrive, where that's actually not true at all. Like a spiral staircase, even if we start our healing journey up here, there's going to be a point at each spiral that's connected to the piece above that is going to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And so imagine every stair has a correlating stair on the next one down. That's our healing journey. And so if you start looking into your family of origin and say you're like, well, I started this work 10 years ago. Why am I still learning lessons about the same thing? I thought it was over this, or I thought it was past this, or I thought I understood that. For me, it's the spiral case analogy, where you're just going deeper on the lessons, deeper on the programming, deeper on the impact to have a greater, wider, and something more, a depth of understanding, right? So on this family of origin piece, when I was about 18 years old, maybe 18 and a half, almost 19, I sent my parents letters. It was just, I don't know, one of them was definitely a 4-page letter. And it was really like just giving perspective and sharing what I felt about my childhood, was good, was wrong, what I didn't appreciate, what I did appreciate, and what I was desiring to heal with my parents. And that really has been the journey, really, like literally ever since then. And so this past holiday season, I realized that while I have been intentional about trying to understand or heal or work through things with my parents, until you get to a certain level of, I want to say a level of truth, right? Meaning you have to literally acknowledge some things to be able to work through things. And when you're working on healing a relationship with another person, it takes both people, both perspectives, acknowledging, being honest about, or not just hearing the other person's experience and perspective. So one of the things that was really confusing me is I could date really generous, phenomenal, kind men, but somehow I'd be like, I don't really want a relationship. I'm not looking for a relationship right now. I'm just kind of like hanging out or whatever the case may be, or having periods of abstinence, like not dating anyone, not even necessarily around sex, because you can date whoever you want, and you should not be sleeping with all the people that you're dating, FYI. And so, just periods where I didn't want to be connected to people, right? And then when I look at the template of person that I do choose serious relationships with, or that I have chosen to have children with, which is a long-term commitment, all of these people are of a certain template, and they are similar. They're not exactly the same, but they're relatively, it's been consistently a pretty unhealthy dynamic, whatever those longer term relationship, marriage relationships are. And so over here you have this contrast of like very generous, very kind, all around good dudes, right? So I'm not a person that can say, I just date horrible people all the time, I don't know what's going on. That's not the case. And so it causes a little bit of a problem, because when you get into other relationships that are less generous, more restrictive, or unkind, there's a built-in agitation, because you're just like, I don't want to deal with that. Like, it's not normal, and it's not expected, right? And so over this past holiday, I went to go visit family out of town. And I don't know what happened, but it was like it just clicked in for me. And so I realized that I've been running 2 background programs, one of which I wasn't predominantly aware of it. It wasn't in the forefront. So when I went on that healing journey with my family, it was my parents, it was my mom and my dad, addressing them. But then there is a third party in here that is equally as impactful in my life, probably 2. And they didn't come to mind as readily as my parents when I looked at the impact that had on my life. And so those people are my uncles. I have one uncle on each side of my family, my mother's side and my father's side, who were just so ridiculously generous and loving and kind towards me. I think for both of them, I'm their favorite niece. And so whatever goes into that, the doting, the provision, the generosity, the care. But there's one uncle in particular on my dad's side that would also listen to me. I was one of those folks where I'm just like, nobody is hearing my perspective as a young person, like 13, 12. And we would just go on these rides. I just remember being in the car and he would be just listening to me. And it just felt so amazing. And it was just very validating, because I just didn't have very many people in my life that listened to me. Even when I was wrong, he would, I don't know, gently tell me that I was wrong or wasn't seeing things in the right way. And that's something that still stands to this day. We were speaking not too long ago, and he was just like, hey, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I was just like, yeah, okay. Like, it wasn't rough, but it's one of those things where if someone invests, I say that you can't correct where you don't invest. That's something that I share with parents all the time, especially if they're getting resistance from their children on certain things. It's like, if you haven't loved and invested in your children and poured into them in other ways, and you only come with the correction and all the things that they're doing wrong, they're typically not going to give you a good response. And I know that because of the type of child that I was and the children that I have, where it's just like, we can have some really hard conversations, but it's because I've loved and poured into them and I've been there for them. So when it comes time to correct, you can do that. And so when I was visiting with them, there were these patterns that were arising based upon modern circumstances. And pretty much what I saw was the template of man that I commit to, or have like serious commitments or marriage with, they have the template of my father. Not a healthy template. Not necessarily healthy when it comes to how they interact with women and all of that, but it's pretty consistent. In particular, I remember, maybe about 14 years ago, I was going through something in a relationship, and that person also has a similar template to my dad. And I remember asking him, like, you know, he acts like you, and these are some of the tactics and things that I've seen you do with women, whether it be my mom or my stepmom. How do I, like, give me some insight? Like, it doesn't hurt you any to give me the inside scoop, because I'm not a woman that you're trying to like manipulate and run around. This is your daughter, and I'm trying to get some advice about how I can navigate a person like this who is like you. And I just remember just getting this blank stare, like, and it was like, all right, after a couple of minutes of silence, I was like, all right, let me just go get our drinks. I think I'd cooked dinner for us or something. And I just went, got our drinks, and came back, sat on the couch, and just continued to talk about more shallow whatever. And so in that particular dynamic, there is a lot of charm. There's a lot of manipulation. There's a lot of even financial abuse. There's a lot of punishing. There's a lot of control. And it has shown up in many different relationships in many different ways. Not just parent, it's also, interpersonal, right? And so then on the other hand, I have this uncle who, as I visited and was spending time over this holiday, generous with everyone, not just his wife, not just his children, not just me, like generous with everyone, his friends' family, just watching. And it just kind of flowed in a way that was so natural, and it was so familiar, but it was so comforting. And so as I am physically in space in these two different households, like I can feel the difference. I can feel my body responding to the differences in each space. And it was one of the first times where I had a physical reaction to like being in touch with, like, am I in a generous environment, or am I in a harmful or controlling environment? I'm not going to get into the circumstances that produced those feelings, but it was just very clear. And so then, and I've also been doing this in other spaces, like even with a particular work environment, I was just like, oh my gosh, my body is reacting like it reacts in this other controlling and unhealthy, toxic space. And so what I've been learning to do in this season, and I think one of the lower levels on this staircase, is not just understanding logically or informationally what those generational curses are and generational impact, but like, what is the nervous system impact on me, and how am I feel, like, what's coming up for me? And so it's been interesting to be in different spaces and to have different experiences, even in my own home. Like, what is the baseline set for, like, do I live in a home where someone's blood pressure is constantly being elevated? Am I creating my home in a peaceful manner? Like, what's the baseline? And so pretty much at this juncture, my home baseline is like, it's peace, it's chill, it's consistent, period. And so anything that is outside of that, I can feel it above or beyond my baseline, but my baseline is calm right now. So with that being said, I began to realize that the two tracks that I have been, I don't even want to say attracting, because we attract all kinds of people, right? It's just about who we entertain and in what capacity we entertain them. And so I realized that this track over here where people are like, hey, how you doing? Amazing, like generous. And when I say generous, I don't mean to say like people don't spend money on you. I think there's a piece of, because it's not even really about money, it's more like a generous energy. And so people can spend money on you with the purposes of controlling you or manipulating you or saying like, I did that for you and so you owe me. Like, so that alone doesn't dictate generosity. But when someone is generous in spirit and just open, there's an air of like, I want to take care, like not even I want to, I'm going to, and I am taking care of everyone that's in my purview. And what I began to see it as it kind of was registering with me, it's like, it's the difference between a king and a pauper, right? A king knows his assets, and I don't mean king like wealthy, right? someone cannot have that much money but be like the king of his home. And it's because of that energy of like, I am covering and taking care of everything that's in my purview right now. So if it's just my wife and children, I am taking care of them. If I have friends over, or I have nieces and nephews over, or I have neighbors over, they are still now under my care and domain. I have to steward them well, versus pauper mentality where it's like, we don't have enough. Can you bring something over? And I don't mean like gifts and being polite. I mean like, we're not going to be able to do this unless someone else is bringing in, but it's kind of this like take kind of energy. And if the like status quo is threatened, meaning like resources are threatened in any kind of way and they're not the same, now it's almost like a cat being backed into a corner where it's like and some of the behavior can just be very like reactive or harmful or intense because it is it feels threatening, right? Every little thing could be like a threat to the balance of that home. And so the difference in that energy is, instead of that person that's the head of that household establishing the energy and dictating like the care and the generosity, it's very like reactive and like looking for things to go wrong or problems. And it's a very it's just like a reactive and lower space in terms of reacting outward rather than establishing from the top inward and like encasing this thing. And so it was something that was like so transformative to me, because I started to then go back and think about all these different relationships, dating, committed relationships, and then that's where the pattern showed up for me. And I was like, oh my God, Jackie, you are choosing to have serious relationships with the ones that are the template of your actual father and the actual patterns and generational stuff that goes along there, but you are interacting with and you're enjoying, and your heart expectation is actually for the people that you've dated or the template of generosity. So what's happening is you are constantly coming into space where you're choosing to be in these committed relationships with people with the expectation of generosity. You're bringing that template to the template of not lack of generosity, for lack of better terms. And so when I began to think about that, it was like, okay, why is that happening, right? Because it's not about a person not being generous. It's about what we accept. And so when I got to thinking and processing on that, I'm like, oh, I'm trying to heal and perform, like heal this other template over here and try to transform it into something generous. And number one, that's not my work to do. But number two, that's a wounding that's connected to my childhood and my interaction with my parent that I'm trying to heal through all of these other people. And so I'm just like, okay, if I commit to this situation, if I lean in and I show up and I give my best, ultimately there will be this like redemptive thing to the original wounding. And, you know, talking to my therapist about it, talking to different trusted folks about it, it's like there's a point where there has to be a level of acceptance. And someone that I love and trust told me that just this past week, and they said it in a way where I was just like, oh, my takeaway was, you are battling, you have a high level of lack of acceptance of who that person is. And so I realized that right now my work is to accept that my parent is who they are, parents really, because this can apply to so many different situations. It's just me understanding how I am here yet again, different phase, same system, same everything. And like, okay, what's going on? And it's not for lack of other healing work. It's not lack of education. It's not lack of any of those things. but it's that stairwell, that winding stairwell where it's like, no, you got to get deeper. You have to address it. And so at this point, it's like, I'm navigating this. I know my identity in Christ, right? I know what the proper things are that I need to be looking for. I knew the right questions to ask. I wasn't, having premarital sex and doing all that kind of stuff. So there's certain things that shifted and were different than what was happening in previous seasons, but it didn't stop me from projecting this signal out and choosing this particular person. And so one of the other things was in that season of life, coming off of the murder of my sister, my family that was on my dad's side of the family, we were all like scattered and in our different places, and we were not in a cohesive, healthy place. And before that took place, there was a lot of information that had come up and out from my conversations with my sisters, and it was really disheartening. It was hurtful. It was shocking. And there was an offer on the table for those things to be addressed all together, all of my siblings and I, with, our shared parent. And that offer was not taken. It was very much so like, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't have anything to talk about. So, And so then that being followed up with the subsequent loss of my sister, it was really impactful to be like, you had a chance to have some humility and to do right and to have a healing moment, right, with all of your children together. And now one of those children has been lost, and you didn't care enough to take advantage of that moment for whatever reason. And so that was really impactful too, to kind of feel like, wow, like you're really locked into whatever that perspective is. Something as intense as having your child be murdered still doesn't move you to any level of, humility. It's like you want to be close, but like on a surface level. And so those are all things that were like, I was really reaching out to heal. Like I was desiring to heal that new information, right? Because that's the thing. When we think about, at least for me, the stuff that's happened in childhood, I have actually forgiven my parents for all of those things. I think the tension and the interesting thing comes up is that when patterns still persist, or there's new things that come up that need forgiveness, it's easy sometimes to bypass that and say, oh, you're just still stuck on the past. And it's like, no, I'm not. I've forgiven that, but now we have this, so can we talk about it and kind of process through that? And so choosing to be in relationship in that time, I am 100% responsible for my choices. Like I am trying to heal this wound through this new relationship in subsequent marriage. And so fast forwarding to getting back from that trip in January, a little bit, I think it was after New Year's, and having a conversation with my spouse about it. And I was just like, I think I said, like, I'm not gonna be married to my dad for the rest of my life. And I see very clearly, like, not taking it outside of the person in front of me and looking at the template, and then looking at where dissatisfaction was lying. It's like my heart, my nurturing from a man, the foundation of that, because it's so interesting. This is why nuance is so important. Even if your parents aren't there for you, it's not always that you were raised in neglect, or that you would have the same issues as somebody whose parents were like absolutely not there for them ever, if you have other replacement people. So what do I mean by that? My mom, super busy, working physician, all of that in my childhood, but I had a super, like, on my mom's side of the family, I have so much extended family that loves me, nurtured me, took care of me, fed me. I played, I was at everybody's house. Like, we're just close knit in that way, to the point where that absence, it was more like she's at work, but like I still had a very full nurturing childhood with those extended family members, my aunties, my grandmother. Like I was still raised, I was still taken care of, I was still loved very deeply, right? And then on my dad's side, even though he wasn't in the home, my parents did divorce at 9, but he was out of the house, I think, by like 4 or 5. To start, he was my primary caregiver because my mom was in medical school and working as a doctor, you know, doing her residency, like super busy. And so my dad was my primary caregiver. But then when he left, I had that extended family from my mom's side, or nannies, babysitters. But then when he would come and get me for the summers to hang out, it wasn't that I was necessarily spending time with him. He would drop me off to his family, which included uncles, aunties, cousins, great uncles, a bunch of people that love me really deeply. And so I actually, from my uncle, have that foundation laid. And even my uncles on my mom's side, like they adored me, they loved me, they took care of me, they always showed me love, they didn't mistreat me. I only have one uncle that I have had a negative interaction with, and he wasn't somebody that I was around very often, so it just didn't even, it was just like, oh, I'm not going to be around you, you know what I mean? And so oftentimes when we look at folks and we try to like make it like, oh, if your dad wasn't in your life then you don't have anybody, it's like, no. Being around my uncle, him listening to me, him taking me for drives, talking to me, making sure that I was with him at all times, everything is taken care of, because that's who he is, that's still who he is. That laid a foundation of expectation for me about what it is like to be loved by a man. And so even though my dad wasn't present, that foundation was laid by my uncle. I was also around some great uncles. It's just like, we got you, boom, boom, boom. My uncles on my mom's side, we got you, boom, 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 baby girl all around. Like that's just what it was. And so, you know, that expectation is there from a future partner. And so sometimes I'm accepting that into my life, but I'm not committing to that in my past for whatever reason. And then I'm choosing to let the stage of my intimate relationships be to heal this wounded space from my actual father. And so my expectations, right? And then my attempt to heal, they coalesce and they come into the same place, which ultimately causes issues. And so some folks might say, well, your dad wasn't in your life, like you shouldn't even have those expectations, or you know, if you were a single mother before, you shouldn't have expectations that a man is gonna like be there for you or whatever. But it's like, no, I've had those expectations for years. Those expectations were set in with my uncle, and it doesn't mean like they have to be like him, but that generosity, the taking care, kindness, listening, caring about the person that you're with, and not like looking for a, you know, because there's a difference, right? If someone says, I'm looking for a wife, they are probably looking for a wife. They're looking for someone to cook, clean, have sex with, maybe build a little something, but primarily they're looking for someone to do those things. But if someone comes and they're just like, I want to be a husband, oh my goodness, that comes with so much more, because that man is seeking to fulfill a certain amount of characteristics that actually have nothing to do with whatever woman they marry, because they want to be a certain kind of man, right? And so when I was looking at those templates, my dad has always wanted wives to do. But my uncle has always wanted to be a husband. And so he does. And what I will say is, I have a beautiful example in him and some of my closer friends that are married, where you see that when a man is generous and loving and actually likes and loves his wife, the reciprocity that flows is not a problem. I find that most of the time when people are looking for people to give to them, and that's like, I want you to do all of these things, that's where the energy flow is off. Because I don't think that they understand that, like, when you are flowing with love and generosity from the top, it comes back. The respect, the love, the honor, the catering, it comes back. When you have catering in this other template, it's really like subjugation is what it winds up feeling like, because the woman in that situation might be doing it, but she's probably doing it out of obligation. She's not doing it out of respect for you or love or gratitude for the way that you love and treat her, right? And so just understanding all of that and looking at, like, what do you want life to be like? And let's really get to the root of that. And let's talk about that and be for real with that. Because at the end of the day, all the things that have happened, like, we're all responsible for our own decisions, but I'm also responsible for who I chose, why I chose, how quickly I chose, like, all of these things. And so when we are really focused on growth and moving forward, we have to address those things. And so for me, that process really started where I literally had like a, I guess I would say an embodied moment where I could feel the differences and I could feel my comfort and discomfort. I could feel myself shelling up, closing up, being kind of one-dimensional, and then I could see myself kind of blossoming and opening and talking and being, you know, like, yes, and da 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 da, with all the people that were in that space, because I felt safe. And so understanding that my template for safety actually was established. It just wasn't established by the person that was responsible for, you know, a share of my DNA. But it was established. And then my soul, my soul, I would say, is trying to heal the part of me where that safety wasn't established with the person who is responsible for half of my DNA. And that is what's driving the committed, longer term people that I choose. It's coming from that space. Because truly and honestly, I want to say throughout my 20s and probably early 30s, I was like, I don't need to be married. Like, I'm good. I'll date when I want to and enjoy my life. You know, I was a creative, singing, traveling, doing all these things. I like my solitude. You know, I was homeschooling my children or traveling and doing whatever. Like, I will be in a relationship and then not. I'll be in another relationship and then not. But marriage felt a little like, I was like, ooh. And it wasn't until, it wasn't really, like I said, when the Holy Spirit kind of tapped me on my shoulder and was like, yo, like, I want you to da-da-da-da, like, are you done? Are you going to come back now? And I kind of had my prodigal daughter moment. That's when the desire for godly kingdom marriage reignited in me. It's not that I didn't want to be married as a young person. I did. But once certain things happened in my life and I kind of saw, like, I'm not going to have the, like, great story of like, oh, we met each other at like 20 and then like we've been married for 30 years. Once that was out the door, I was just like, oh, okay, like, I'm good. I'll figure this out. And so, you know, my desire, like they say, like, once you get closer to God, your heart desires the things that God desires. Marriage is so important. Marriage is so sacred, and it is an amazing institution. And when done right, at least as far as I've seen it, it's just so beautiful. It doesn't mean that it's perfect. Like, all the married couples that I'm good friends with and the married couples that I have examples of in my family that are healthy, when done right, it's freaking amazing. And so even now, going through a divorce, it's like, I don't feel like marriage is the issue, right? It's like togetherness, equally yokedness, respect and honor, and being in position, not perfection, right? Because this is not about marrying a perfect person or anything like that, but not being out for control, manipulation, cheating, all that stuff. Like, that's not coming into something with like, how can I get over? That's not the foundation for a healthy marriage. And so when I see that, it's just like, no, like, marriage is beautiful. And right now having those conversations with the appropriate folks in terms, therapists and God and the Holy Spirit, like, what do I need to heal? How do I need to heal this? Right? So that I can actually get rid of this template over here altogether and actually begin to choose based upon that foundation that was laid by my uncle. And so I did get a chance to tell him that and have a really dope conversation around that, because it is in process. Like, this is just something from this past January that was like really getting some information on it. So it's been about 7 months of processing. But I would also say it makes it easier to just not accept BS as well, where it's just like, nope, this is why there's tension, because this situation is requiring me to accept less. And there's some things that you can shift. Like at the marriage workshop that we went to, one of the most powerful things that was said was the wife in the couple that was leading the workshop. She said, who am I cultivating my husband to be? And when we went to that marriage workshop and we were talking about like maybe working through things, that was one of my personal takeaways, where I was just like, you know what? I have not been cultivating you into a good representative of my husband, and I need to focus on doing that. And so there was absolute effort made to do that. Now, what I will say is your effort and your decision to do that doesn't supersede someone else's wiring. So that's just a caution in that regard. But that is absolutely like moving forward and understanding the responsibility of a wife as well to cultivate the husband in front of her. That's absolutely something that I've seen in these couples that I love and that I adore. I can always see how the wife has cultivated it. Now, there was a man that was willing, able, and wired to be cultivated. Not like control and manipulation and things like that aren't present. But when you see the design and you see how it works and you see just the beauty of it, even through the ups and downs, because these couples go through their ups and downs now. Like, they are not at all happy-go-lucky, skipping across whatever and everything is perfect. But that was one of the most important takeaways, where it's like, if you're embarking on this journey as a woman, and you're like, I know that I'm called to be a wife, that mindset of who am I cultivating my husband to be, not controlling my husband to be, not forcing my husband to be, but like cultivating based upon what you know, and then based upon the vision and goal that was set before you all. It's critical. It's so critical. And one of the things, like, just even looking, I'm like, okay, Lord, with rocky soil, this is how things have been able to multiply. Like, I believe that wives are created to multiply. But it's like, even with this messed up soil, there's still been levels of multiplication. And so the excitement and the joy about not even necessarily multiplying in another relationship, but like continuing to cultivate my own inner multiplier, whether that's for myself, for my children, or another person in the future. I don't know. That's absolutely not even actually on my radar. But cultivating my own multiplierness, if you will, that's like, it's been such a joy to witness that, like stewarding myself and my own ability to multiply, mind, body, and spirit. And so I would just encourage you, as you're watching this, think about your family of origin. What are you still holding on to? And don't get caught up in what society tells you is absolutely this or absolutely that. Because I've heard so many folks share like, oh my gosh, if her dad wasn't there, then she's gonna have like low expectations of men and this and this and that. And it's like, no, you need to dig a little further and find out what men were in that woman's life and who did set the template and the foundation in their life. And so let's just get curious about our own lives and our own foundations, our family of origin, and let God really speak to you. Because a lot of the things, it just felt so like why do I feel like I have this expectation, but then I feel like I have this desire to heal this thing, and like they were just friction, right? And so that was it. And I did not get that revelation at all until I was physically in space over this holiday, where I was like, oh, that's what it is. My spirit literally closes up and hardens in controlling and or abusive environments. My spirit literally blossoms, opens up, and is so playful and childlike and soft in generous environments. And I am not talking about this happening over a long span of time. I'm talking about day by day, like within a week's time, being in these spaces and feeling my body open up, shut, open up, shut, open up, shut, watching my child's response, open up, shut, open up, shut. Because this is not even just about being a woman. This is about how the environment that is created actually impacts the people's spirits and souls that are there, right? And some of us, we fight to remain open. We fight for our softness or openness, but most of the time we're going to lose that battle, if I'm honest, because it becomes so oppressive and so like it's just oppressive, and you can only push back but so much, on that. And so it was just a really beautiful revelation. So I'm still on that journey. I'm still learning, but I'm having those conversations and giving myself like grace in terms of not pushing myself, because that's the other thing. I realized that in those years where I was intentionally trying to heal things with my dad and make it happen in certain kind of ways, I was forcing it, and I didn't realize that my spirit was responding in that way. And I know that there's only a certain level of healing that will take place when there is safety in a safe space in that relationship. And that's where the acceptance piece and the acceptance conversation comes in. Because if you never get that and you're never afforded that, how are you then going to heal and move forward, healing that wound without the other person's participation, or without that person's participation in a safe way? And that's where God comes in, and where God really does that transformative work. But quite honestly, I've never even asked about that in that way. And so really it's like having the tools of knowing what to ask God for, how to ask him for it, what specifically to ask for, and why. And that changes the game overall. So this is just a little story about like where I'm at on that journey. Hopefully this has been helpful for you, but it's been eye-opening, and it's been a beautiful journey for me to really understand on a deeper level some of, just the roots and the genesis of why I choose how I choose. So yeah, hope it was helpful. We're gonna keep going.